Today was another day of one step forward, one step back for Julia Gillard. The Reserve Bank announced an aggressive rate cut, delivering a financial benefit to households ahead of next week's budget. But new poll numbers out today underlined the government's poor performance and prompted another round of questions about Julia Gillard's leadership. Political correspondent Iggulden reports from Canberra.
Some numbers are heading in the government's direction.
50, yeah! They've gone 50.
The Reserve Bank surprised pundits with a 0.5 percentage point cut to official rates. Market reaction was immediate.
Bang, there goes the currency, drops 0.5%.
Political reaction,
I'm pleased you care,
was right behind it.
Today at 3.75%, the Reserve Bank's cash rate is lower than it was at any time under the last Liberal government and 300 basis points lower than when the Liberals left office.
What that indicates is that the Australian economy under Labor is weaker than the Reserve Bank originally expected and what many people have seen.
The RBA Governor's statement did note economic conditions have been somewhat weaker than expected while inflation has moderated, but commercial banks' defiance of previous rate moves also had an impact on the size of the cut. Governor Stevens said the RBA doubled up on the normal rate movement in order to deliver the appropriate level of borrowing rates. The full rate cut would deliver savings of about $90 a month on the average mortgage, but in a lead others will likely follow, Bank of Queensland this afternoon cut its lending rates by just 35 basis points. But with a budget to sell next week, Wayne Swan knows any relief for households is welcome news for the government.
Obviously, it would not have happened if we didn't have the right economic strategy and contained inflation.
Nothing here gives credit to the government. In fact, it's the absolute opposite. The Reserve Bank is moving because the government has lost control of the Australian economy.
I don't know how we could turn this story, which is a very good story for Australia, on its head like that.
But just as one set of numbers broke in the government's favour, the turn of the dice on another front was more sobering.
Today's polling is breathtaking. It is so bad.
News polls showing that if an election was held today, the coalition would win in a massive landslide. There are now calls from within Labor for the Prime Minister to take another look at the carbon tax.
I think she needs to think seriously about whether she can revoke it or, in fact, whether she can lessen its impact somehow, whether she can dial it back somehow. She does need a game changer on this. It's the one horse that Tony Abbott can ride all the way to the election.
The government's primary votes again sunk to near historical lows, while the coalition's hasn't been this high since John Howard hitched his fortunes to the Tampa affair.
As a political observer, it's hard to see the Labor Party persisting with somebody who's taken their polls to such a low level, and I expect that they will do something within the next few months, and I believe they will bring back Mr Rudd.
That's not exactly an unbiased forecast, but it is true that Julia Gillard's leadership could do with a break. And a very small one came this afternoon in the form of a media report suggesting opposition frontbencher Christopher Pyne pressured Peter Slipper's former staffer into taking legal action against him. The report says Mr Pyne asked for James Ashby's personal phone number after sharing a few drinks with him about a month before Mr Ashby lodged his claims against Mr Slipper.
So did he phone Mr Ashby after he requested his telephone number? Is he prepared to provide his phone records and make those public if he hasn't phoned Mr Ashby?
Mr Pyne's acknowledged he did meet Mr Ashby 3 times, hardly unusual, he points out, in his role as manager of opposition business. But he says on no occasion did Mr Ashby raise the matters canvassed in the federal court action that have subsequently come to light with me, and added, I have had no telephone contact with Mr Ashby at any time. Mr Ashby's also released a statement tonight saying he has nothing to say regarding Mr Pyne's comments and asserting he's paying his own legal fees. Tom Iggulden, Late Line.